Infinity N5 Battle Report for ITS-17. I participated in another tournament called Hoplite Havoc 5, which was hosted by a gaming community in Perth called Outpost. And Outpost is just another small community, a part of the broader Western Australia Infinity group. And for this tournament, 8 players attended, and again I finished last place. So this is my first list. This list was a combination of a similar list for the previous 2 tournaments I was running, and it's called Murders and Executions, if you can capture the reference. So in this team I have a Harris, it is a Order Sergeant Harris consisting of brother Konstantinos, an Infirmera, and a Black Friar with Thunderbolt +1 burst. This was my Harris fire team. That was a bit of a utility fire team. It had vision control with disco ballers from Konstantinos, plus he has sensor and deactivator, MIM -3 and MSV level 1. Infirmera there to provide the level 2 duo with Konstantinos, because Konstantinos is both considered a Crozier or Order Sergeant, and the Infirmera is considered an Order Sergeant with a keyword. So this makes it a level 2 Harris, and this is to give the Black Friar an extra special dice in active and reactive turn. And the Black Friar is the MSV active shooter. So for exactly the same points, however 0 SWC, then the Crozier the Crozier HMG with MSV level 2. I think the Black Friar is a better option. It just has a bit more durability, 1 extra BS, better armor, and for the same point cost is a better piece than the Crozier because it's a medium infantry. It's a bit more durable. Following that, I have a core fire team of 3 Knight Hospitalers. DeFerson, who is the lieutenant, is an active lieutenant, and he has the Hospitaler keyword. So this will be a level 3 core fire team. Previously, this was normally the Hospitaler HMG, but I decided to mix it with a Spitfire for DeFerson just to get more utility out of him, and the other Knights are there to provide a bit more usefulness. So obviously the Tinbot Firewall -3 is to protect DeFerson, because DeFerson is a pretty good hacker. And in my previous games I needed an alternative to isolate some heavy troopers, heavy infantry, tags, vehicles. So I brought along the Hospitaler with boarding shotgun and emitter, because the emitter is quite a very useful weapon, and EM weaponry in this edition and this season is very useful to have. Following in Group 1 is True Trinitarians, but previously both of them were deployable repeaters to set up a network, but I found sometimes a repeater is good to discourage heavy infantry and vehicles vulnerable to hacking, or troopers vulnerable to hacking, but I had nothing to slow down troopers, so I decided to split it and have one with a deployable repeater, generally probably on the opposite side of the table to DeFerson, and then I had a mine layer with shock mines just to provide a counter light infantry, medium infantry attack pieces in the midfield. Sorry for the bunch of bogans behind me in the background. In Group 2, rounded out with the level 2 duo, Crozier multi-sniper rifle with mine layer as a good active ARO piece. Just sit him far back as I can in my deployment zone. And he's paired with the Knight Commander chain of command, because DeFerson is an active lieutenant, so if he goes down I do not want to be lost lieutenant. So the Knight Commander is there, and he was hollow masking as a Crozier Blitzen. Followed by a Curator with deployable cover. Pardon me. And I was just testing out the deployable cover in this tournament, and it's not a bad thing to have, but if I have the points I might upgrade it to a deployable turret, because the cover is only useful in certain situations. And then I have a Crusader with the multi-rifle light flamethrower +1 burst, and he was sort of my go-to guy for any problems that need to be fixed or sorted out from the back, either from the flanks or from the backfield. He was just my ace in the hole essentially. And this list actually plays quite well. I like it, so I'll probably keep practice running this list, but I also want to change things up a bit too. So this is my list 2, and I didn't know what to bring for list 2. I was just thinking about one listing it, but I thought I'll try something out instead. So after watching Infinity the Dante's video about themed armies, I thought I would try a themed army for this tournament, and I was considering a Crusader force, so utilizing the Military Orders Crusade action pack, which I have, which is just Hospitallers and Joan of Arc. And I wanted to run Joan of Arc to understand why she isn't so great in Military Orders. And I think Joan of Arc can do well, but you have to sort of be very skilled at playing her. So for this list, there is no fire teams, even though there is the option to make fire teams if I wanted to. I wanted to run it without, because I think Joan of Arc is better as a unlinked piece, because her inspiring leadership allows for her lieutenant order to be quite useful and doing coordinated orders. So I built this list around the theme of, the knights are going in to do a crusade into Shinju, and I thought this way I could test the inspiring leadership rule and try to make the most of it, which, funnily enough, didn't quite happen in this tournament. But anyway, so it consists of Joan of Arc as the lieutenant with the multi-rifle and pulsar +1 burst, supported by nothing but Hospitallers. So we had the HMG version, we had the emitter boarding shotgun version, we have the Hospitaller with 4 deployment +8 with the boarding shotgun and contender, and following with a Knight of Justice hacker with the multi-marksman rifle and pitcher and decharges. Rounding out the heavy infantry side of things was the Knight of Montesa, the dismounted version, because everyone seems to be raving about him recently with that Blitzen and the +1 special dice, so I wanted to give that a try. Followed up with a random Crozier, because that was all the points I had left. Curator with deployable cover and a power bot. I had a Teutonic Knight with a missile launcher who has BS attack -3. Now with this, I plan on using the Curator to put down the deployable cover and use the Vitrophone, which gives a +6 to armor save. Now using the Vitrophone, it does not apply a -3 modifier to your opponent's ballistic skill attacks. So that was kind of irrelevant for the Teutonic Knight because they have limited cover. They do not gain that anyway. So I thought, because they're armor 3, if I give him an extra 6 to hide behind as an ARO piece, then he will obviously be a lot more survivable, which actually turns out to be the case. And so it was quite a good use for that. And I think it's the only time deployable cover would be quite useful is for something specific like a Teutonic Knight, because they do, as I said, they do not gain that -3 to opponent's BS because of limited cover, and the Vitrophone does not allow it. So I thought, why not add it to it and see how a Teutonic Knight with a total of arm 6 on top of the weapons PS, and see how that goes. I had the Crusader Fort Observer as my midfield specialist, with boarding shotgun, flash pulse, and decharges. And Group 2 consists of the Mulebot Evo hacker, and that was basically to either put down. It's not combat jump. It's anyway. I can't remember it now. Sorry, but the hacking program that supports the troops coming in via combat jump. +3 to theirs, -3 to the opponents for whatever reason. So it was for that, and also to apply the Tinbot firewall, the firewall -3, the fairy dust for heavy infantry, because they are quite vulnerable to hacking. So that was my second list, and it's quite thematic. I only played it once before, and I was stress testing it, and it was a very miserable stress test, but it certainly made me realise that I cannot deploy all these troopers individually across my deployment zone because it is such a limited insertion list. I have to keep it, the lesson learned from that previous game was keeping troopers closed up on one half of the deployment zone and have overlapping arcs of fire to protect each other. So the first mission off the rank was Cutthroat, and this is just a simple shooty one. You have a key ops, kill more lieutenants than your opponent, kill more army points than your opponent, and have your key ops do more damage. So my plan for this was, if I had first turn, to maximize causing as much damage to my opponent as possible. If I'm having second turn, my plan or strategy was to just deploy deep in my deployment zone, bunker down and force my opponent to come to me. And I realized before the tournament that's probably a good tactic one as well. my tactic, if I was to go first, was to just harbour up inside a building or around a building, have everyone have overlapping fields of fire to cover all the pathways to my guys, and then just sink my orders into my Crusader and just go on a bit of a run and just do what I can. That's the plan anyway. You'll see that it did not work that way. Second mission was corporate appropriation. So for this one, you have to capture your opponent's prototype and destroy your own. And so my plan for this was always really the same in my previous games: quickly capture my opponent's prototype and move it as far as possible into my deployment zone, and then set up to protect it, and then just go for my prototype and destroy it. So obviously I had some protection over my prototype, but obviously it's not as strong as what it could be, and I wanted, as my backup, I had the Crusader to push up and land and try and destroy it if possible, or even use that Trinitarian, just walk in camouflage state. And then if I could achieve that, just finish off with doing some classifieds. Last mission was Uplink Center, another direct action mission similar to Cutthroat. So it was quite simple, with having the first turn, activate the antennas early and hold them for the duration of the game. And if failing that, try and accomplish the objectives in the later turns, either turn 2 or do a push for turn 3. Now for the games. Now I was away for a week before recording this, so my memory is a little bit hazy, I'm sorry. So I just record whatever events I can remember at the time, and it'll probably be a short summary of the battles. So apologies for that in advance. So game 1 was Cutthroat. So here's my deployment. Who deployed first? I think I deployed second. But anyway, I had my Evo hacker down here on the left. I had the random Crozier with Blitz in here. My Titanic Knight missile launcher on top here, pretty much having good line of fire all the way around here. The Curator with deployable cover here. The Knight of Justice hacker here, looking down this way and down this way. The Knight Hospitaller with HMG here, covering down this way and through these buildings here. Knight of Montessa inside the building here. The Hospitaller with the boarding shotgun emitter, and Joan was sitting here in the corner. So my plan was to castle up in this building, defend as much as I can, and just hold out and let my opponent come to me. And my reserve drop was the contender for deployment 8 inches here. Now I'll explain why I deployed that there in a bit. So my opponent had a Harris team in here with his lieutenant, and there's is that the war core? Oh yeah, I think that's the war core on top there. Over here he had another Harris with Phoenix just around here, Hippolyta here, and Myrmidon officer here. That was a Dava hacker, I think. Let me just check the list. Just apologies, wait a few minutes, a few seconds. So that was Scylla, but she's not on the roof, she's in this bottom floor here, and we just said, instead of having to remove everything and make it difficult, we just put her on the roof and had her represent down in here. And then she had her Dava bot tucked in behind this corner on the ground level as well, covering this arc here. And then we had what do they call those little auto generators? A net rod. One net rod here, and I think one up the back here, around here somewhere. And then he had a couple of off-board troopers. Oh, he had a flash pulse bot somewhere around here too, not on the map, I cannot remember. But he had a couple of troopers. He had a Gema marksman in hidden deployment, and an Ekdromos hacker, killing hacking device as well. And they sort of knew about them because they entered the battlefield when they needed to. And then his reserve drop was Adronoma, which was here, and that was his Cheops, and I made this my Cheops as well. So the reason why I put my Hospitaller with 4 deployment edges here, because I was just thinking for fun. I should have deployed it over here to the left, and then moved around here and entered into this building and took out his fire team. But after listening to the Loss of Lieutenant podcast about the art of the fork and how good Adronima was, I thought to slow my opponent down, I'll place my guy here and we'll just battle it out. And others thought, why not? See what happens. So during the mission, these two battled it out. Going second, I did place the Knight of Justice on Suppressor Fire because he had a good lane down here to prevent Adronima from coming this way, and the HMG had a bit of a line down there, so he'd prevent her from going that way. Well, I thought it did, but it turned out it's a bit closer than one expected. So anyway, these two battled it out, and I was disappointed that I lost this guy, but it took about 5 orders for Adronima to start becoming a threat. So I think 2 or 3 orders, and eventually this knight died, and then Adronima went out this way, and unfortunately I have a good line of fire with my Knight of Justice here with a multi-marksman rifle, so that discouraged my opponent. So then he made Adronima go around it this way. Let me just use a better colour. So then he basically pushed her up here, and then pushed her all the way to here, and then he took out that. So this guy was already killed first, then that guy. Along the way, my emitter tried to shoot her but failed. And then he revealed his Gema marksman, which was up here on the top next to this Scylla, which is technically hiding down here. And then that sniper took out my Crozier. And then I deployed my deployable cover here and allowed this tank knight to come up and to try and take out the Gema marksman, but failed. Because hey, dice are dice. And then I did my best to do damage control to deal with Adronima. Eventually I put her down, but then Joan became isolated because of the zapper. So it doesn't put me into loss, and I just nominated a new lieutenant, which was the Knight of Justice, and then he dropped down. He's what you call it, Ekdramai? Is that how you say it? Ekdramus, Killer Hacker, and just move all around here, and ended up CCing him and killing out my Knight of Justice at the end of the game. And that was about it. I did put my Crusader come in here behind this building, and then come around to take out Phoenix, but I forgot it was the boarding shotgun version, not the light flamethrower one, so that plan sort of died in the ass. And that was basically about it. It was fun. I was happy with the way the forward deploying Hospitaller kept Andromeda, how do I say her name probably? Yeah, Andromeda. And wasting a lot of orders. He's quite durable. I mean, my armor saves of this mission were quite good. They were very good. But I just couldn't land a hit on anything, and if I did, it always ended up fouling compared to my opponent. However, a lesson learnt from this is when coming up against Andromeda, my Knight Hospitaller had a slightly higher CC attack of 22 versus Andromeda 21. And although she has martial arts level 3, it's still only 1 hit, but she has an extra special dice to help make her success a bit more obvious, especially when using guard. And with the Knight Hospitaller, it sort of equalised it out in a bit, because I did have a few good CC attacks, but obviously, she passed her arm saves, and I was just unlucky sometimes to lose a wound, but it was a prolonged battle, and it was quite an even fork. So in this case, obviously there's he could have fired the zapper, but I think he just forgot about it, or maybe he was not wanting to reveal it until coming down and having a go at Joan. But obviously using the contender or boarding shotgun was a lot worse, because the BS for my knight is a lot lower compared to a CC attack. So he initially did a BS attack against my CC attack and realised that failed, but he did pass his armor save, so then it was always just a CC attack. So against troopers such as Adronima or anyone that has a fork, while you might have better chances because you have more dice in the BS attack, it's the risk of scoring lower, because I have martial arts level 2, which means his BS attack will be at a -3 and my CC attack will be at a +3. It favours the CC attack version. So sometimes in such cases against a good CC trooper, the best option for ARO against a 4-king trooper would be, in this case, CC. And so that was game 1. Game 2 was corporate appropriation. And again, this was the other top player for Western Australia Infinity. Cutthroat was against one of the other top players as well. So my first 2 games were against 2 of the best players for WA. So this is the table setup. This is my side. My opponent kept deployment and chose for me to deploy first on this side, and he kept that side because it does have better avenues of cover. So with that, my choice was to go first. So here for my deployment, we have from right to left treasure. This is our treasure token. Have a MIM -3 here, which was the shock mine from the Trinitarian, which was hidden deployed just here to the left of the vehicle. We have the Infirmary here in an Order Sergeant Harris fire team with Konstantinos inside this building, and he has a line of fire out to here, and the Black Friar with Thunderbolt. Coming along, we have Repeater here with my second hidden deployed Trinitarian in this spot here. Then I have the Curator up here prone, ready to put cover for the Crozier Sniper, and the Crozier Sniper in a duo with the Knight Commander chain of command, and the EO mine here. And I have my DeFerson Harris fire team of the Boarding Shock and Emitter up here as another arrow piece. DeFerson just down here at the left of the stairs to sort of cover down this flank and through underneath the helipad here. Not over the prototype exactly, but at least discouraging any movement this way, and the tin bot inside the building here. And then for my opponent's deployment, what was my reserve drop? I think my reserve drop was DeFerson, and I changed that around a bit because I was not happy having him up here being a target, so I swapped him for down there. And then my Crusader is obviously off board and remaining off board. My opponent had a camo token here, one here, and one here, and they were his 3 Dalami with Panzerfausts. He had my HVT was tucked in behind this, the bridge is blocking it, but it's next to this support pillar here. And my opponent had his treasure token and HVT behind this tall structure here on his side. He had his flyer. It's that really awesome one that's actually quite scary, that I'm surprised exists in the game. What's it called? Let me bring up this list. The Zyback with AP Spitfire. So that's a pretty scary profile, and it has Albedo -6, BS attack -3, with an AP Spitfire and smoke grenade launcher. And Albedo -6 and BS attack -3 also applies to the operator when it busts out after losing 2 structure, and it also keeps the Spitfire. So yeah, quite a intimidating weapon piece. So that was their I think that was a, what do you call it, a Matawaya here, and another one here, the boarding shotgun jammer version. He had these 2 up here. They were his Mukhtar. He had Saladin on top here, and a pair of Dalaskay, one with marksmanship and 1 Fort Observer behind this building here as a duo. The Mukhtars as a duo. There was a Sasha somewhere, I can't remember where he put his Sasha. And his this was his war core up here, and then his reserve drop was his Margariba guard behind this building here, so it ended up down here. And for this, my 3 classifieds were HVT follow-up, kidnapping, and designation. So I was really sort of hoping the Trinitarians would push around from here and up there, but obviously that didn't work out that way because that was against my plan. So my plan, what happened was this Dalami was a bit of a threat, so I thought maybe I'd deal with that first, and I wasted an order or 2 dealing with that. But then eventually Konstantinos placed a disco baller around here and activated it, which was successful. And then my Trinitarian came out and basically ran all the way here, tucked up in this corner. and just placed a few shock mines along the way, expending his allotment of shock mines, and that was going to protect him from anything there. And what else happened this turn? I think the sniper had a bit of a face-to-face with this one and with this camo token up here, and eventually ended up dying. And I'm not sure, I think, oh no, that's right, yeah, I did give it cover, but obviously it didn't make a difference. And then my opponent, what did he do? I'm trying to think what he did. Well, he put basically his tag came running up to here. I managed to put it in isolated state and brick it with the emitter. He did kill Deferson, unfortunately, but because I had Chain Commander, wasn't Lost Lieutenant, so that was good. And then he dropped a couple of speedballs. One of his mutts was up here, and they just, fixed that basically, and then went around and captured that and ran all the way back. And then second turn, I tried to push my Trinitarian with a prototype back further into this corner and just put it, facing that way. Reposition the Infirmary to revive Konstantinos, and just try to take out whatever I could at the time, which wasn't as successful as I liked. And then let me just clear the board up a bit. So this is roughly around second round. And then he managed to unbrick his Magbury Brigade and took out this knight, came round through here, and just took out my Trinitarian, and then he had that was it, and then he pushed his Zybeck up to here, and then basically I was sort of locked out of the game. I think he ended up killing probably my Black Fry and Infirmary as well, so I was down a few orders at this stage, and I couldn't come anywhere near to do anything else. I was trying to move around here if I could to extract an item from here, but I just could not. Oh yeah, he used Saladin for coordinated order, and these two troopers both picked up something from the box, so that was an extra objective point to him. And he scored 2 opportunities against my HVT. One was the Forward Observer one, and there was something else, and then he tried to go for capture, was it secure HVT, but my Trinitarian revealed and moved around into here as a camo token to deny him that, so it could have been more, but it ended up being 7 zip. So that was about it. So I was kind of impressed with my first turn efforts to capture the opponent's prototype. I shouldn't have wasted orders dealing with that Dalami here. I should have just thrown the disco ball first, because that would have blocked his line of fire, and just pushed my Trinitarian further back, maybe even around to this one, and just hold up in this building here and keep it at that, or maybe even go up these stairs and just go run on the roof and stay there. So I was kind of happy with the way that game turned out. Just unfortunate that a tag can do tag things and win most of the face-to-face fights, and deny me my objectives. So that's just the way it is. Well played to my opponents for the first and second game. Third and last game for the day was Uplink Center. So I was coming up against Kestrel here, and I think I chose to go first, I think. Anyway, I ended up choosing first, and my opponent kept a plummet. So on this side, from left to right, we have the Infirmary, Black Friar with Thunderbolt, and Konstantinos on the left. This photo was taken towards the end of my first round because I forgot to take a photograph. So these 3 knights were sort of grouped around here initially, and then they pushed up there. But that's so my Harris here with Deferson, Spitfire, the Knight boarding shotgun emitter, and the Timbot Firewall -3. Have a Trinitarian that was deployed up here in camo marker with a repeater here, protecting the tech coffin, and the other Trinitarian is a camo marker on my side of the antenna, not touching it of course, but prone there. And I had the shock mine here and then I had my sniper up here, crazy sniper, and the night commander there, and then the EM mine here. So for the game, my sniper was killed quite early on, and my plan was to, well, this Trinitarian here, I ran up over here and placed a repeater here, so I could isolate his, what's that guy's name? Sorry. Sorry, I'm just bringing up my opponent's list from memory so I can. It was the Hectari with multi-red Fury in a duo with a Pathfinder drone bot. So I couldn't isolate the Hectari, so I did is isolated the drone bot instead. What else happened? These guys moved up here to hold the midfield, and yeah, someone took out I think his Griffin here, around here, took out my sniper. So this is his Griffin HMG with who was it? Bipandra, and the other one was the Huraback hidden behind here in a core fire team with a whole bunch of Fennec Fusiliers. And so that was happened. Eventually, these knights eventually moved up this fire team with the Black Friar up to this point on the roof, just to cover down and deal with that. Konstantinos moved up here and activated this antenna, and moved back here with the Infirmary here, and then eventually they just died throughout the game. His Jackal here and this one here, spec firing EM grenades but failed, thank goodness. The Knights moved up here, and my Knight with Tinbot eventually moved up to hold this but died in the process because the Hectari was now up here. Activated this antenna but then died because the Griffin was there, and eventually his Yamabushi touched it and controlled it. And then the Banshee that was deployed on table behind this building flew around here and activated this antenna. And so that was basically the game. So I had a lot of firepower pointing at me with the Hectari and the two Griffins in fire teams. I managed to do well. But again, more troopers does sort of have the advantage of more orders. I just could not kill anything or hit anything. I think I did take down this Griffin, but that was because it was here, and so like a mine and a shotgun fork allowed me to do that. Otherwise I was not having much luck, and yeah, eventually my opponent just had the orders and the dice rolls to accomplish the mission. And so that's the end of that last game. So that's the end of the 3 games. Now for the after action review. For Cutthroat, I scored 1 objective point while my opponent scored 10 objective points. And I do not remember the armory points remaining because once they're recorded in Corvus Sphere, when I go back into them to look at the results, the army points are not displayed, only the objective points. So my opponent scored 3 objective points for killing more of my army. He killed 1 lieutenant and I killed none. He killed my Cheops, but I also killed his Cheops in return, and then his Cheops killed pretty much all the troopers that were killed, or nearly all of the troopers that were killed. So it was a good game for my opponent, well played, and Adronima is certainly the queen of forks. Corporate appropriation. 0 for me. My opponent scored 7 in total. At the end of the game, they captured their prototype and had it in their deployment zone. Theirs was no longer captured by me, and they acquired more items from the Panoply. And my opponent completed 2 classified objectives as well. So that was a good fun game. I actually enjoyed playing that game, and showed me I need a bit more practice with my mergers and acquisition list. Final game, Public Center. Yeah, none for me. I'm pretty sure my opponent killed my lieutenant in the last round of his turn. I cannot remember, but either way, my opponent scored 8 versus 0 to me. So he had 2 antennas that were activated. He controlled the tech coffin and had an active lieutenant. So all my opponents played really well, and I enjoyed my games against them, and there was a lot of lessons to learn. So what did I learn? I did question afterwards the deployment of my opponent's camo troopers in Uplink Center, and going through the rules again, I realised that the restriction was only for deployable pieces of equipment and weapons. The restriction is they cannot deploy if there's a camo token within their zone of control, except for a viable non-camo token, or a viable trooper that isn't in camouflage state or impersonation state. So when it comes to troopers in camouflage, there is no restriction to placing camouflage troopers next to my camouflage troopers. As far as I'm aware, feel free to correct me in the comments, but the restriction only applies to deployable pieces of equipment, not troopers themselves. So my opponents Yamabushi and Jackal were quite okay in deploying next to my Trinitarian that was in camouflage state. Secondly, whilst having the advantage of first turn does make it hard to deploy effectively. That is because the opponent, once seeing how I deployed, can effectively counter-deploy my movement. So whenever anyone is deploying first and having the first turn, your only option is really to deploy, setting yourself up to complete the mission. And then your opponent going second has the advantage of counter-deploying you to prevent that or make it more difficult for the active player to achieve his missions or his plan. So deployment does allow for a slightly stronger advantage than initiative. And when deploying for first, you do need some sort of vision control just to help mitigate those opportunities, whether just to block out an arrow piece, block out a movement corridor to allow you to move forward to the objective, or having a solid arrow piece that can counter your opponent's arrow piece that they put down. An example of this is my plan of attack was to throw the disco ball with Konstantinos, move the Trinitarian into contact with the prototype, and then run back. And unfortunately there was a camo token, a Delami, that was there as an arrow piece, and I wasted 2 to 3 orders dealing with that. Instead I should have just stuck to the plan, because then whatever orders was left I could have reconstituted Konstantinos and brought him back towards the end. That's a lesson learned. But otherwise my plan was effective, and it was only effective because I had the option to discourage enemy arrow and allow me to move in, capture the objective and come back. So deploying first has a slight disadvantage and deploying second has all the advantage. However, deploying first gives you the advantage to take opportunity of the limited pieces that are available, unless your opponent going second decides to put everything up on stand up on arrow, and then that's, well, it can either be successful or unsuccessful depending on the dice. Thirdly, I really wanted to utilize Joan of Arc within military orders, and I wanted to understand her skill inspiring leadership and to use it more, or to be effective in using it. I do need more games and more practice to make that happen. This tournament in Cutthroat and the previous game, I did not have the option to use it because I was taking second place. I was going second, and so I never had the opportunity because my opponents tended to negate most of my troopers. So hopefully in more games I can learn to use the skill and be more proficient in using inspiring leadership. This is the end of the battle report. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I do like to see them and I do read them and try to respond as soon as I can. Thank you for watching, and as always, the dice decide the outcome.